Hey, what's up guys? This video is for section 8.8, which is solving differences of squares. So yesterday I made a short video to help you guys on how to factor difference of squares. Today I'm going to show you guys how to solve when you guys have a difference of squares. Now there is a method that I use in order to solve, which is called the square root rule, and I'll talk about that right now. Now this is a short version of the lesson that I assigned in the Google Classroom. If you guys want to watch the full lesson, go ahead and go to my playlist on my Algebra 1 in my YouTube channel, and you guys can watch the full video. But let's go ahead and look at one question here. So let's start with number 16. You guys have the equation 4y squared equals 81. Notice that we do have an equation. We have a variable. The variable doesn't really matter. You just want to solve for that variable. You can have an x, a p, m, a y. But you guys do have a square. First of all, this is a quadratic equation because you guys have a degree of 2. So we do have a quadratic equation, but this is one method to solve quadratic equations. On my previous lessons, you guys learned how to solve a quadratic equation by factoring. But this one is a different method to solve quadratic equations. And there's actually a couple more, but you guys are learning the square root rule in this video. So first of all, in order to use that rule, the square root rule, you must get the variable with the square by itself. So if you guys notice here, the 4 and the y squared, they're multiplying each other. So I need to get that y squared by itself. Let me draw a box so you guys know what I'm talking about right here. So I need to get that by itself. When I'm multiplying 4 times y squared, I'm going to do the opposite in order to cancel the 4. So I divide by 4 on this side, divide by 4 on this side. So I get a 1 right here. Remember that 4 divided by 4 is 1. I don't need it. So I just have a y squared equals 81 over 4. Now here's where the square root rule comes in, because you guys have to remember that when you guys have a squared and you guys want to use the square root rule, well, you guys can cancel the square by taking the square roots because they're opposites from each other. Square roots and the squared will cancel, just like a positive 7 and a negative 7. If you combine, they do cancel. So I'm going to take the square roots. I'm going to have this one here, and whatever you do to one side, you are going to do it to the other side. Now we know, I just told you guys, the square roots and the squared will cancel because they're opposites. You guys bring down the y. Here's my equal sign. Now, one thing that you guys also have to remember is when you guys are finding or solving an equation, quadratic equation, and you are finding the square root of a number, you have two options. You will have a positive option and a negative option. So I need to put my plus and a minus right there, plus or minus. Never forget that plus or minus when you are solving for a variable and you're using square roots. Now, inside of this radical, you guys have the square root. 81 over 4, first of all, you guys cannot simplify. But if you guys also notice, the two numbers are perfect square numbers. 81 has a perfect square root, and the 4 has a perfect square root. So all you do, guys, you take the square roots of both numbers, the numerator and denominator. So the square root of 81 is 9, and on the bottom, the square root of 4 is 2. Notice that I'm not using the square root anymore because I already found the square root of the numbers. Square root of 81 is 9, so I don't need that radical anymore. Square root of 4 is 2. I don't need that radical anymore. And you guys cannot simplify the fraction, so I solve by using the square root rule. Now, what does it mean? Y equals plus or minus 9 over 2. Well, you guys have two answers. You guys have two different numbers. I'm going to separate those for you guys, and I'm going to put it in brackets right here. The first number is going to be a negative 9 over 2, comma, and the second number or the second answer is 9 over 2. One positive and one negative. No, they're not the same number because one is a positive and the other one is negative. Now let me tell you guys a trick. Since we do have a quadratic, degree is 2, quadratic equation, the degree tells you how many answers you guys need to find. Degree of 2, you guys need to find 2 answers. In Algebra 2, you guys are going to learn how to solve cubic equations. Cubic is 3, that's your degree. So that means you have 3 answers. Or maybe a quartic, that's a degree of 4 answers, and so forth, all right? So the degree tells you guys how many answers you guys have. Let's do number 18. 98b squared minus 50 equals 0. First of all, remember that in order to use the square root rule, you guys need to have the variable that has a square by itself. So the b squared has to be by itself. I am going to add 50 to both sides because I need to get everything on the other side. So that goes away. So I have a 98 with the b squared, and I have a 50 on this side. The next step, remember that we are multiplying the 98 and the b squared. So I am going to divide both sides by 98, and you guys cancel this one here. So we have a b squared, there's the b squared by itself, equals 50 over 98. Now pay attention to the numbers. The 50 and the 98 are not perfect square numbers. They do have a square root, but it's going to be a decimal. That's not what we want. We want perfect square numbers. I noticed that you can simplify by 2. You guys can reduce the fraction by 2. So if you guys can reduce when they're not perfect square numbers, go ahead and reduce the fraction, and that's going to make your life a lot easier. So I'm just going to do the work on this side here, guys. B squared equals 25 over 49. Now, how do I get those numbers? Remember that I divide by 2. 50 divided by 2 and 98 divided by 2. So 50 divided by 2 is 25, 98 divided by 2 is 49. You guys reduce the fraction. Notice the numbers. They are perfect square numbers. They have perfect square roots. So I'm going to use the square root rule. I take the square root on this side, and whatever you do to one side, you do it to the other side. So I have the b equals, remember the square roots and the square cancels. And I'm going to I need my plus and a minus. And I take the square root of both numbers, numerator and denominator. Square root of 25 is 5. Square root of 49 is 7. So guess what, guys? Those two are my answers. B is by itself, and we found 2 answers. I'm going to separate my 2 answers here, negative 5 over 7 and positive 5 over 7. So we have 2 answers. It's a fraction. You guys solve by using the square root rule. And I'm just going to do a couple more, guys, but let's go ahead and try number 20. Now keep in mind, these problems are from the worksheet that I assigned in my lesson. So it is your homework. I'm doing a few questions for you guys. And even though you guys have the answers, you guys can also check your answers with the videos. For the ones that I didn't do, well, you guys try those and check the answers with the answer key. So let's go ahead and do number 20. First of all, I do have a fraction here and I'm subtracting, and I don't have a variable next to it. The t square is right here. So I am going to get rid of this fraction. And even though, guys, even though it is a fraction, you don't have to multiply by the denominator because that's going to make more work. So you guys just do the opposite of the fraction. You guys are going to add that fraction, 64 over 121, and those two are going to cancel because one's a negative, one's a positive. Now you have to do the same thing to the other side, positive 64 over 121. So when you guys do that, you bring down the t squared here, and when you guys actually add these two fractions, or not two fractions, 0 is not a fraction, but you guys add these two, 0 plus 64 over 121, well, it's the fraction, positive 64 over 121, because 0 times a number, it's the number you guys are adding, or maybe you're subtracting, but in this case, we're adding. The next step, you guys take the square root of both sides, right here. So cancel the square roots. You guys have the t here. You have the plus and the minus, and these are perfect square numbers. I knew that, that's why I didn't reduce the fraction, but they are perfect square numbers. So the square root of 64 is 8, and the square root of 121 is 11. So I got my 2 answers. You guys can separate your answers, negative 8 over 11 and positive 8 over 11. And the last one I'm going to do here, guys, is number 22, and it says 1 over 36 x squared minus 25 equals 0. So let's go ahead and understand the problem here. First of all, I need to add 25 to both sides. So let's go ahead and do that because I need the x squared by itself. That is the variable that has a square. Let me put a box around the x squared so you remember we're trying to get that by itself first. So you guys cancel the 25s. I do have the 1 over 36 x squared equals, and you guys have a 25 over here. Now, to get rid of the fraction, you guys do have a 1 over 36 times x squared. So guess what? You guys can multiply this by 36, this side by 36. So the 36 and the denominator simplifies. So you guys have a 1x squared. Guess what? I don't need that 1 next to the x. I'm just going to erase the 1. And on the other side, I have 900, 25 times 36. You guys take the square root of both sides. This square root and the square cancels. You have the x here. Don't forget the plus and the minus because you guys are taking the square root and you're solving a quadratic equation. And the square root of 900 is 30. So we do have two answers here. My two answers are one negative 30, the other one is positive 30. That's the x values. I'm going to put it in brackets, negative 30 or positive 30. So you guys are learning how to solve a quadratic equation by using the square roots rule, okay? Keep in mind, you guys already saw how to solve equations by using, by factoring. You guys factor the trinomial, you guys use the zero product property, and you solve for x, right? That's when you have the two binomials equal to 0 and you guys solve for the variable. This one, you guys are using the square roots rule or the square root property. So I hope you guys are doing your homework. I hope these videos are helping you guys out. Make sure you guys practice all the time and check out my videos. If you guys want to watch the full version, the full lesson in my YouTube channel on my playlist for Algebra 1, you guys can find the full version of this lesson. So make sure you guys practice, and I'll see you guys later.